Hi, and welcome to this post-social podcast. In today's podcast, we talk to blind football coach developer and sports sociologist Keon Richardson. Currently working as a sport development officer at HR Sports Academy, we discuss his work around disability sports, including within the Paralympics with Zimbabwe. Before we start, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and check the description for our Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn pages. Yes, thank you very much, Keon, for being here today. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Oliver. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. So before we go into the main topic today, could you just give like a quick description about yourself, like what you do for work, what your interests are?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Keon Richardson. I am a sport development officer at HR Sports Academy. My interests range from playing futsal, football, coaching, particularly in blind football, but also mainstream football as well. And yeah, also interested in traveling as well.
Right, okay. So before we go into your work, you did a university, you did sport and Olympic studies. What made you want to do that before getting into any work?
Yeah, so that was for my master's degree, and I was interested in doing that because the program itself was run by the University of Tsukuba in partnership with TS and Sport for Tomorrow. So I was part of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic legacy to train up to 100 sport leaders from around the world. So there was quite a few sort of like boxes it ticks for my personal goals. So one of them was obviously to do I was interested in doing a master's, particularly around like sport and sociology. A lot of the masters here in England are mainly focused around sport and exercise science. There isn't really much that looks from sport from a social perspective or in the area of sociology. And then obviously to live in another country, I've always wanted to live in another country. I've been traveled to different places. And blind football and futsal is quite strong in Japan. They have good infrastructure. There's different leagues that's set up there. So yeah, it was quite a number of different reasons I want to study the Sport and Olympic Studies course. And obviously the course itself, it had a range of different content from around the Olympic legacy, the Paralympic legacy, elite sport coaching. So yeah, it was just sort of all encompassing, really.
Right. So you mentioned futsal as well.
Yeah.
Is that coaching futsal? Is that playing, or just as a fan of the sport?
Yeah, so a bit of both. So initially, I got introduced to futsal when I did like an introductory course in around 2011, 2012. And then when I went to study at the University of Bath, I went for a trial for the high performance futsal program that was there. So I got involved in playing. And then whilst I was playing, I was doing my coaching qualifications in futsal and a number of other sports. So yeah, now I'm sort of doing both.
Right. Okay, interesting. Yeah. So back to Olympic or Paralympic, I say, you went with Zimbabwe. You were part of their national Paralympic committee. Can you talk about what role you had and what your responsibilities were?
Yeah, so I've been working with the Zimbabwe National Paralympic Committee for the past 4 years now. And yeah, we've co-founded a blind football project together. So I've been working as a blind football coach educator. So it's mainly been planning and delivering blind football coaching clinics in schools or educational institutions. So universities, schools for the blind, mainstream schools with vision impaired resource units, primary schools, all the different institutions that have students who are visually impaired, and then also mobilizing to the different blindfolds from different partners and people, coaches and donors as well.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So as well as being part of the Zimbabwe National Paralympic Committee, you also do some writing about five-a-side football as well.
Yeah.
How did that opportunity come up to do as well?
Yeah. So in terms of like for blind football, I volunteered at the European Championships in 2015 in Hereford, and that was the first time like I'd heard about blind football and seeing it, and I was really fascinated and impressed by the quality. So I said to myself that I want to get more involved in blind football. So I emailed the International Blind Sport Federation, the blind football committee. So they had a Facebook page, and I just messaged asking if there's any volunteering opportunities, particularly around coaching. Because I was doing some coaching in blind football around that time as well. So initially they said there wasn't, but they were saying they're looking for someone to sort of run social media for the community. So to sort of run their Facebook page, post daily updates on blind football development across the world. And initially I hadn't been like, other than posting from my own Facebook page, like I didn't really have much social media experience. So I just myself, I'm interested in blind football, so let me have a go. Yeah, so it was mainly posting up, liaising with different national Paralympic committees and national sport organisations responsible for blind football, finding out what's going on in their country, what's going on in different regions, and just posting content on the Facebook. And from there, I got recommended to take up this volunteering opportunity with the International Paralympic Committee as a football five-a-side writer. So it's mainly around producing editorial content, writing pre-articles and post-articles and different tournaments that are on. So like the regional championships, so like the Asian blind football championships, African championships, European championships, and interviewing different players as well. So yeah, I applied for the opportunity and I was selected.
Very interesting. Yeah. So you've done a lot of work with blind football as well.
Yeah.
Was when you first started with blind football, was there any like ambition to do beforehand? Was there like were you a fan of blind football beforehand?
Again, as I said, I didn't really know much about blind football. I think
Right.
in 2015, when I was in my second year of uni, I wanted to we had a course around professional practice. So a lot of it was around getting industry experience, whether it was coaching, teaching, and like I I was doing some coaching with like plan disability football, and I wanted to go into like impairment Pacific. So like in 2015, there was obviously the blind football European Championships and the cerebral palsy football world championships at St George's Park. Um, so I said to myself, I want to volunteer like as sort of like an events coordinator at one of the two tournaments. So initially I applied for the cerebral palsy world championships, but they said they wasn't able to offer. I think the shifts they wanted me to do, like it was quite difficult because they wasn't offering accommodation. Obviously, to try and get accommodation around St George's Park is quite expensive, and
Can
it's
imagine.
quite yeah. So I went for the volunteering opportunity at the Blind Football European Championships in Hereford, um, and that wasn't it wasn't a close journey either, because I was studying in Bath, but yeah, it was. I think it was from that moment. Obviously, I have, and I am passionate about football, and futsal, and I think blind football was just a blend of the two together. It's just obviously specifically for people who are visually impaired. So I think from volunteering for the European Championships, that's when it sort of sparked my passion and my sort of ambition to get involved in the game a lot more.
Right. Yeah. Very interesting. So your current role as a disability officer, you've done that as well as where you are now with
Yeah,
the Palace Life Foundation. Is that right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what role was a disability officer?
So that role, was probably after I graduated uni. So it was around between November 2017 to August 2019. So it was mainly around like developing and delivering term time football programs in schools. So different special schools, and also impairment specific sessions. So the learning disability football session. We had a Down syndrome football session, and obviously my experience in blind football. I set up two blind football sessions in two schools. Line managing, part-time volunteering, and part-time coaches and volunteers as well. And also generating funding from fee-paying schools and external partners to sort of sustain our projects as well. So yeah, there was quite a range of different roles, so from admin, coaching, line managing, coaching. So it was quite a range of different roles that were involved, or responsibilities that were involved.
Okay, so another line of work you've done with the International Blind Sports Federation. What was your role there? How did that opportunity come about to go and work with them?
Yeah, so similar to the work I've been doing with the International Paralympic Committee. So as I mentioned before, it's mainly around like posting daily updates on their social media pages on blind football, that's on tournaments and development happening in different parts of the world, and also sort of going to producing social media content at their sanctioned competitions. So I got invited to go to Berlin in 2017 to cover their European Championships. So interviewing athletes, producing articles from each day of the competition. And I also got invited to go to Tokyo 2020 last year to provide coverage of the blind football competition at the Paralympic Games. So that opportunity came about from I just sent a message to the Facebook page because I wanted to get involved more in coaching as opposed to social media management. And they said they haven't got any coaching opportunities, but they're looking for someone to sort of support the running of the Facebook page. So yeah, I just got involved. From there, that's how I got involved.
Right. Well, okay. So you've definitely been around the world with Olympics and Paralympics, definitely. So with your career, your work experience with the Paralympics, do you think you've seen a lot of change, good or bad, in terms of support or popularity in the Paralympics?
Yeah, I think in terms of popularity, I think it's definitely becoming a lot more visible. There's a lot more content being produced on mainstream pages. There's a lot more sort of journalists and different outlets that are producing content and different articles about blind football. In terms of support, I think it varies from, if we're talking institutionally, so from the International Blind Sport Federation, who sort of govern blind football, I'd say yes, there's been a lot of support. It's the sport has spread, well, especially the sport has spread to a range of different regions. And again, different Paralympic sports, you're seeing an increase in the number of teams competing at regional tournaments, and sort of emerging nations that are coming to the Paralympic Games and being quite successful. But I think different countries are having different issues. So I think that ranges from financial support, sort of building the next generation of Paralympic athletes, resources in terms of adapted equipment. I think so from each country is case by case. So I think it is improving, but I think there's still a lot of work that still needs to be done.
Yeah, well, in terms of popularity, I can definitely see it being on the up. Because I know I've started watching Paralympics just because it's quite amazing what they do, really, with such their disabilities. Like, well, my personal favourite would be, I guess, the swimming, because I just think it's incredible. Most of them do. Do you have any other ambitions working in the Paralympics? Maybe it's like coaching, as you go into coaching a Paralympian, or any other role within?
Yeah, I think, especially I think it's definitely going to be a long-term goal. But I think in terms of with my blind football project with the Zimbabwe National Paralympic Committee, I think we want to establish a national team, and one that eventually qualifies to compete at the Paralympic Games and get a medal. And I think it's definitely achievable, because we've seen a lot of nations that have sort of emerged and gone to the Paralympics and competed against some of the top nations like Brazil, China. Morocco recently won bronze at the last Paralympic Games in blind football, which was it was their first ever bronze medal. And they were the first African nation to win a Paralympic bronze medal. So I think that does leave some inspiration for us, and I think it's definitely one thing I'd really want to achieve within the space of the Paralympics.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Got a lot of information, and regarding the end goal there, hope it comes to fruition one day.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.